All right, welcome everyone. Again, if you can hear the sound of my voice, raise your hand. There we go. People can apparently hear me. Thank you, Victor, Terry, and I'm sure there's more. All right. We discussed in a previous class how to do a presentation for a buyer, the kinds of things that you might want to cover. What you want to get from them is an agreement to work with you. And now we're going to start showing homes. Doesn't that sound like fun? And I've given you a handout for those of you that are looking for a handout. And we're going to sort of go through the handout, and then I'm going to show you what I would do when I'm working, online, what kind of tools we would use, some things like that. It'll be fun, right? Now, find and show homes, right? The thing about real estate is there's a whole bunch of little steps, sometimes big steps, that have to be mastered and controlled and done well in order to get a commission check. For example, you have to talk to people about buying, selling, and investing in real estate. You have to have conversations. If you have conversations, then you're going to have appointments. And in the appointment, you can explain your value proposition. What are you going to do to help them? And get a commitment to work together. Also explain the process. Then the next step, and I'm focusing on buyers, is the servicing of the client, which with buyers means to start with finding them a home. Right after we find them a home, then we have to write an offer and get an offer accepted. That's another topic which we're going to be covering. And then we have to close the transaction. So right now we're focusing on how do you find them homes, right? Which might seem like a really easy thing, but there's a lot of nuances, which if you pay attention to can actually make the process work a lot better. That would mean they are less likely to dump you because you're giving them great service. It would mean you're more likely to get a referral from somebody else because they like the way you handled yourself and what you did to help them find a home. Some statistics from our union, the Association of Realtors, 88% of the buyers bought their home through a real estate agent or broker. About 6% directly from a builder or a builder's agent. There's not much you can do about that because builders sometimes just don't cooperate. Having an agent help them find the right home is what 51% said was the most important thing, right? There's a bunch of things that they said was important, but that was one of the most important things. By the way, those of you that are in my coaching program, my EXP group, or who I'm mentoring will find in the document library a copy of the 2021 National Association of Realtors home buying and seller profile, right? Fascinating reading. 40% of buyers use an agent that was referred to them. It's actually a little bit higher. Most buyers only interview one agent, and most buyers would use their agent again. But they oftentimes don't because they don't even know where the agent is anymore, right? Making it happen. There are 3 steps. Number 1, find the right home, right? Qualifying the homes and then help. Now, a lot of what you can do in advance will make this easier. And we're going to go through that list, right? So let me see, how's this work? Oh, well, it looks okay. I have formatting issues sometimes. So one of the things you're going to want to do is set them up on a instant notification system, right? If you're wondering what that means, here, let me do this slightly differently. If you're wondering what that means, it means that we're going to set up an auto alert, right, of various types. All right, here, let me do that. All right, okay. So we're going to want to set them up on an auto alert. Now, I believe I wrote this later. The buyer instant notification is what we call sometimes an auto alert. Now, there's a limit, right, as to what your MLS will let you do. I'll get to that in a moment, right? You want to monitor what the buyers are receiving from your website and your app and back office tools. Also, that would be the MLS. You contact them when you see a property that they should see. Ask them to contact you when they find something that they would like to see. Let me see if I put this. All right, I'll cover that. All right, it's coming up. Check in periodically to see what kind of homes they're looking at. I texted one of my buyers this morning. How's it going? They're still looking. We showed homes on the weekend. If it's a hot buyer, right, somebody that's motivated to buy and they're ready to buy and they've been pre-approved and you've gone through all that, they're ready to go. If that's the case, you don't want it to go too many days without you communicating with them. So you should be checking in, and that could be daily, it could be every other day. I would also set up a spreadsheet. I'll show you an example of one that I've done. Here, why don't I do that now, right? And this is a spreadsheet from not my current buyer, but from one of the ones that we had, I've already closed. The one we closed, by the way, was this inexpensive house at the top on Cunningham Place. But you'll see what I was doing. And so this was a document, a Google sheet that I had shared with my client. And so I had put in the MLS numbers. The reason for putting in the MLS numbers is not because my client really cared, but sometimes if I'm interested in pulling up what's on the MLS about a given property, the easiest way to do that is to copy the MLS number and paste it into the MLS. It'll take me right there. You can see these were all first-time home buyer kind of properties. So I put in the price. The proposed offer, that is something that my clients would write in, and sometimes you're going to have to show more than 1 or 2 or 3 homes, and sometimes you're going to have to write more than 1, 2 or 3 offers. I had written maybe 20 offers for these buyers. One of the offers we wrote, by the way, was $500,000 over the list price. We didn't have any contingencies. My clients had 50% down, and we still didn't get it. The listing agent told me, unfortunately, our offer was not close to getting it. $500,000 over list price, no contingencies, and rock solid financing wasn't good enough. So for those of you that are saying, well, you don't understand what it's like out there, I understand what it's like out there, right? I do understand. So you're going to probably have to write more than 1 offer, right? And so this was just a way of tracking it. And what my client would sometimes do is he would highlight like a row and line it out if he wasn't interested. It would have bedrooms and bathrooms. It would have the square footage. Most of this I exported from an export that I had created in the MLS. I think I can show you how to do that if we have time. Lot size, postal city. The only reason that that's there is because you might think it's obvious. The area we were looking in, there were 3 cities. There's even a piece of San Jose that was close to where we were looking. I put in the age of the home, and then I put in some of the information that came from the private remarks about when the offers were going to be due. I also, when they have disclosures, and if you're in Silicon Valley, and by Silicon Valley, I mean San Mateo County, Santa Clara County, Southern Alameda County, many of the listings are already going to have the disclosures. Right, they're going to have a termite and a property and a roof and a chip. They're going to have everything. They're going to have a prelim and an SBQ and a TDS. They're going to have everything, and that's because those listing agents don't want the buyer to wiggle out of an escrow. Right, they don't want. Then the next column that I would put in was showing. It says Calendly, but it really should just say showing. And I would include what would be required in order to show the property, right? And because this is a Google Sheet, it means my phone can easily access it, and those links. So if for some reason I needed to connect to that link, there it is. And these are the ones that we're using CalDRE. Some were, say, Grow Direct. Some of them you have to text, that sort of thing. The other thing that I included in the spreadsheet were links to the different RPR reports that I had created for the property. And that's one of the things that I do when I'm showing property is prior to showing the property. First of all, I put it in the spreadsheet, but then the other thing I do is I run a report on the property, which I would share with the client so they would in advance know some information about that particular property and what it might be worth and all of that sort of stuff, right? That was, and I guess we'll go into how to do that. That spreadsheet is not that complicated. You can see when I go into the MLS and our MLS, and I'm using Matrix, and if you're in Bay East, you're using Paragon, and you can do the same thing. If you're in San Francisco or Santa Rosa, you're using, or Sacramento, you're using Rapatoni, you can do the same thing. So let's just say that my client was interested in, this is just an example, anything up to 1,300,000, and they want it to be a single family home, and they're interested in the Morgan Hill Gilroy. How about this? I'm going to make it 1-1, right? And that gives us 26. I want there to be at least 3 bedrooms. There's 22. Let me narrow this down to 4 bedrooms. And now there's 8. All right. Yes. Welcome to my world. 1,100,000 or less. There's 8. Now, in the consultation, I already, and by the way, when I'm doing this, I'm usually doing it in like even a Starbucks or something like that. I bring a Chromebook with me because it doesn't weigh anything and it's really easy for me. It boots up in just a few seconds. It connects with the Wi-Fi where I am. My phone has the Wi-Fi in case I need it. And then I also have invested in, do this better. This is a portable monitor, right? It's a portable monitor and it's got a stand, which is coming apart right now. So what I would do is when I'm talking to somebody and I want to show them properties that are available or whatever, I plug that in and it's sitting there in front of them so I can see what's on my screen and they can see what's on my screen sitting across from me. It's easy to do. It's, costs a couple $100, but that's where I usually meet people, and I need to have sometimes the ability to show them, right? And if it's a Zoom call, it's really easy because I could share my screen, but sharing the screen is something that you're going to have to learn how to do. You were full screen on MLS, so we didn't see the portable monitor. Can't you see the monitor through the camera? Can you show us again now that we can see you? Can you see it through the camera? I hope so. So it folds, sits up. It's just a portable monitor. There are many of them. That one fits in the bag that I carry with me. So and by the way, I carried this when I'm showing property. I have a small, like a little bag, I guess. And in it, I have the Chromebook, I have the chargers, I have the cables that connect it to the portable monitor. I have that all in my car. What's the size and name again? This is a 15.8, I believe. Dimensions is the screen, and it's from a company called BioFun, B-I-O-F-U-N. Just in case, I'm not necessarily saying this is the best one. And yes, and there's a good way to find it. If you wanted a portable monitor, you would go to that which knows the answers to all questions, which is Google. And you might say for a laptop, which the Chromebook essentially is. You can see these are bigger ones than what I need, but if you look around a little bit, you're going to see a whole bunch of portable little monitors, right? And they usually cost, mine was about $150, something like that, right? So if you're interested, search for it. 15.8 is, I believe, the width of it. There are a lot of, it's a pretty good sized monitor, right? It's good enough to show people what the properties look like, right? You want to make sure that, do you have to use the power or the internet or just a hotspot from the phone? My Chromebook needs a Wi-Fi connection. And so my phone obviously is set up for a hotspot. I've also purchased a special app, which I'm not going to go into right now, that allows me to do the hotspot better. I have a couple of hotspot portable, which I rarely use them because I just use my phone as a hotspot. All right, but you might want to make sure that if you're going out into the, out into combat, right, that you have a laptop. The reason I like Chromebooks is they boot up instantly, right? They boot up instantly. Everything I do usually is in Google anyhow. It can fold over like a tablet. It also works like a laptop. Connects easily to my phone, doesn't require a lot of resources. I bring a charger with me, I bring the monitor with me, I have my phone, and that gives me the ability to write an offer or do things on the fly. What's the name of the hotspot app? The thing about this app is that it requires a little bit of technical abilities to install it. It's called PDA Net. Just saying, and it's a program that also will create a hotspot. The reason I use it is that if you use it correctly, it can hide from your internet, your cellular phone carrier, exactly how much data you're using. But I have a plan that includes a decent amount of data. Remember, I'm only going to need that if I'm in an area where there is no Wi-Fi. This is another reason why I like meeting people at Starbucks and Pete's and things like that, because they have Wi-Fi, right? So, but if I'm at a house and my client has a question about something that I need to use the laptop, then I have to use my portable Wi-Fi. All right. So let's say that these are the properties that I want to show people. Now you'll notice some of them have the M with the line across it, which means members only. This is something that I would discuss with the buyer. And the reason I'm going to discuss it is that part of the conversation we have to have is, what do they do with Zillow or something like that, right? Should they be using it? What if they find a property? How should they handle it? And one of the things I point out to them is that my search that I'm going to create for them, my search is going to include coming soons. And coming soons are what those member only listings are. So they'll have an opportunity to know about them before they hit the market. And it looks like Sandra left. Oh my gosh, she asked two questions. Maybe she just lost the connection. All right. So one of the reasons I tell them they want to use this is so that they can find the coming soons, the ones that aren't quite on the market. Now, if I were to connect to all of these, I've created a bunch of exports. Now, if I'm not going to do an MLS class today, because a lot of us are using different MLSs and it's not the subject, and the MLS has a bunch of classes, but you can edit. Notice it says manage displays. You can edit the displays, and this is true for all the MLS software, so it has the columns that you want. I've created an export, and the export is let me see, GRM, activity listing agent. Oh, How much over co-op? Or did I, maybe I've deleted it. Oh my goodness. Why don't I just pick one for fun? So the export, this one would have similar information. Here, I'll just show you. So what you would do is create an export that has the basic information. Now, if I'm really sure I've created one of these in the past, but let me just, since I may not have, why don't I create a new one, right? Why not? And so if I go to export and I pick like agent line 1 or copy of agent line 1, here, that one they don't want me to mess with, but if I pick, I'm not even sure which one that is, and I edit it. So it has the MLS number, it has the listing agent's name and email address. I oftentimes create a spreadsheet that I do not share, but, and I would put that information in it. As you're going to see, I always carry with me my phone, obviously, and on my phone, I've downloaded RPR Mobile, which has a lot of that information. I might also, if one of the things that we would include is showing instructions, showing schedule URL, showing phone, showing instructions text. So all of those kind of things you can save and you can export them. Right now, I don't give my clients the listing agent's name and phone number and email and address and all that, and I don't need to export that because it's in my RPR mobile. Right. So where I'm going with this is if you look at the spreadsheet, you want MLS number, you want the street address, you want the list price. Right now, the proposed offer, that's something they're going to come up with: bedrooms and bathrooms and square footage and lot size and city, all of those sort of things you can create in the display. Right, age. And so your list may be different than mine. You created these others, I have to paste in, right? I have to paste in. My clients like this, right? They can access it on their phone, they can do stuff. Now, once I've created an alert, so let's say this is what somebody wanted. They wanted Morgan Hill or Gilroy under 1.1, that's 4 bedrooms. Surprised that there's even 8 of them. I really am. So if you were my buyer and this is what you were interested in, the first thing I would have done is I would have made sure that you're a contact in my MLS. If not, I could do that along the way. When it goes down here, the first thing I usually do is start with an email, and I would email to my client. How about that client? I would email to my client the list of everything that matches. I would write them a little note. Here's a list of what's on the market right now that you could consider for properties. Preview it and then send it. Once I've sent them the list, right? Once I've sent them the list, I also would save this. And notice my options are I could save it as a search or I could save it as an auto email. Now, at this point, if I haven't put them in as a contact, I need to do that. But I've got, a bunch of contacts, but you could copy yourself, type in the subject, new listings. Now they've already given you verbiage about the portal. Concierge, just so to cover with this, is you want to have a decent email signature, whatever, but concierge, if you click on enable concierge mode, it means that it doesn't automatically send the listings to your client, it sends it to you, and then you can decide if you want to send it to the client. I don't ever do that. And the reason I don't ever do that is that most of my clients have heard of Zillow and they've heard of Redfin and they've heard of Realtor.com. A few years ago, the National Association of Realtors, surveying people that were using Realtor.com, found that on average, the buyer had like 8 different searches running on average. So if I'm not exposing them to all the properties that are on the market, they might be able to figure that out. And they might want to wonder, why I'm not showing them those properties. Why would a real estate agent not want to show buyers a property? And the answer is because the commission rate wasn't as high as the agent wanted. And once my client gets the feeling that I'm screening properties based on that, they might want to find another agent because they know I'm not giving them everything. Now, if I'm concerned about the low commission, that's a different conversation. And you need to get them to make some sort of an agreement in the buyer broker, but there's nothing you could do. Now, notice down here under schedule, so I don't do the concierge thing, that's up to you. Show this contact and reverse prospecting results. I could do that if I wanted to. What reverse prospecting means that is if another agent has a listing and they've heard of reverse prospecting and they're interested in reverse prospecting, they can identify all the agents, which would include me, that have searches set up in the MLS for which that agent's listings would apply. Now, right now, this isn't a big thing because inventory is kind of low and most agents don't need to do reverse prospecting because, they're going to get multiple offers. But if you put that in, it means that agents who have listings, some of them are coming soon, could reach out to you and say, hey, I know you got a client and you're doing a search and that this property matches, and I just wanted to point that out to you that I got this new listing and this is what matches, and are you interested in more information? So that's up to you. I don't save it as a favorite search on my dashboard. I just don't. Notice in schedule, the two choices are every day or as soon as possible. Now, in a low inventory market, sometimes I will do as soon as possible, which means every day that there's a new listing and that within 15 minutes, they get an email. Otherwise, you would just do it once a day. Usually I don't change the default at 8 in the morning. Monthly, that would seem like, what would I do? Why monthly? I mean, that's not a very interested buyer. Well, let's say I was creating an auto alert more for a potential seller than a potential buyer. And I just want to let the person know because they're not ready to put, I've got a listing that it'll be several months, right? They're not ready to put it on the market. They don't need every day. They don't need every hour. Once a month, I would send them an email. When I click on save, what it's going to do is create this portal. Right now, if you're wondering, and so I encourage my clients to use the portal. They oftentimes don't, right? Just because they don't, right? But if I wanted to look at it, if I go up to my matrix and I go to auto emails, what it's going to do is show me some of the emails that I've set up, right? And so here are some of them. And here's an active one, and this is one that I just created. And if I click on it, what it's going to do in the drop down is show me the settings, show me the criteria so I could modify it, show me the results, a market update, open in portal, right? And so this is what the portal looks like to the client. I picked that header, not sure why, but I did. I've got my contact information up there. And when they go through, notice it shows the coming soon's not yet available for viewing appointments. And if they like one, they could heart it, save it as a favorite, save it as a possibility, or discard. So they can be giving me feedback as to which ones they care about. A lot of times they don't, but some people log in, they like, and they also can let me know which ones they would like to see simply by doing this, right? Now, what will happen is when they say to me, here are the ones we want to see, let me go back. What I usually do is I start by looking here. Now you'll notice where it's yellow emailed, although this looks like the search that I just ran, it's not. This is the results of the auto email that I'd set up. So when my clients say we're interested in Benassi Drive and Caspian Way, and Marcia Drive. Those are the three, right? So if I'm going to show them those properties, I'm going to click on those links and I'm going to put them into my spreadsheet and I'm going to look at them. And I'll show you what I mean. So let's say this is one of the properties, right? This is one of them. Now, it looks like a decent house, right? What I'm looking for is I want to read the private remarks because the private remarks is going to give me showing instructions. It's also going to give me offer deadline, right? 2/21 at 10 a.m. I'm going to put that in the spreadsheet. So if my client is interested in this property, they know when offer deadlines are. Now, some of you are in areas where people aren't that, intense, and they're not always doing offer deadlines. Seller is open to considering a strong preemptive offer. I would put those remarks in the spreadsheet so my client could see it. Sometimes you're going to see they don't want a preemptive offer. The seller has asked for no preemptive offer. Well, fine, I would put that in. But if they're open, I would put that in because maybe my client would like to make one. I've made several. None of them have been accepted so far, but reports and disclosures will be by 2/18. I would put that in the spreadsheet so my clients know why I haven't sent them the disclosures yet. And then here's a disclosure link, which since they're saying they're not there yet, I don't know. I would click on that. And by the way, I'm going to be doing a class on how you can do disclosures and you can do all of this without using Disclosures.io. And the reason I don't like Disclosures.io is because it's owned by HomeLight, and HomeLight is a competitor. They are trying to get people to use their agents rather than us, and I just don't feel like supporting them. But you're likely to see Disclosures.io because right now it's in most of the MLSs have it. I'll bet that's going to change because now that they've been purchased by somebody else, I pop in my information and I request access. Now, when I do that, I also have saved the email addresses of my clients. I go ahead and put their name, first name, email, second person, first name, email, hit submit, and they get sent their own Disclosures.io link so that they can read the disclosures. I also, by the way, would copy that link for the disclosures and I would put that in the spreadsheet so that if at a future time they could access it easily, right? There's disclosures you can see. I have a bunch of them, right, from before. I would put that into the spreadsheet. What is the alternative to Disclosures.io for loading disclosures? I'm doing a class next week on how you can use SkySlope. And SkySlope has a way of doing this also. And I'm going to do a class. It's a long answer, Khalid. I saw your message on, workplace, and it's a different topic. But next week, I'm going to go through how you can use SkySlope as well as the other California Association of Realtors ways of sharing the disclosures without having to pay anything extra or having to use Disclosure.io. I saw your text and I was moved to do a class. I take requests. All right. So once you get that set up, they might be using your portal. I actually like the Paragon portal better. And sometimes I've set people up in that, which we can still do in our MLS, but I just like the Paragon portal better. Notice in MLS listings, we have a choice, but I'm too lazy. Time constrained to switch around. So I just create a link and add them, and they let me know which ones they want to see. That's what they do. All right. Set up a spreadsheet. Use the MLS for serious buyers, not just the KV Core system. Why? My KV Core system allows me to send emails, and they look really nice. It's got great branding. It's got my email signature. Why not? When they click on things and like things, it's all in my TV core. Well, there's a problem. And this particular search didn't bring it up. But let's say somebody wanted to buy, and instead of Morgan Hill or Gilroy, they wanted to buy in San Jose, right? Because this will definitely probably happen in San Jose. 4+, just for those of you that are not familiar with the market I'm in, 4 bedrooms or greater under 1.1, there's only 12, right? It's not like there's only 12. Now, let me see, notice this list. All right, let's just look at this. So these are the searches in San Jose. Look at this listing here, BE. Look at this listing here, EB. Now, what's going on? And because notice all of the other ones say ML. Well, what's happening in BE stands for Bay East. EB, I believe, I'm not really too sure which one EB is. It kind of sounds like it should be East Bay, but that's Bay East. I'd have to do a little bit of research. You also see ME and BA and SF. And what all of those other beginning prefixes refer to is agents that are not from our MLS. So the one on Pitcairn Way, let's see, where are they really located? She's in a Coldwell Banker. I'd have to do a little bit of research, but she's obviously not from my MLS. How do I know that? I know it because the MLS number does not begin with ML, it begins with EB, right? Let's see, there's a comment. Is there a way I can see the screen? The screen is being, I don't know what else, the screen is there. All right, so what this means is that if I set up a auto alert using KV Core or Keller Williams Command or Market Leader or any of those programs that you might have, what's going to happen is it only works because it's an IDX program on the listings that are in your actual MLS. So what that would mean is in this particular search, those 2 properties, the one on Lee and the one on Pitcairn, would not show up in the emails that I would send to my clients. They would not show up. And that's because they're not from our MLS. I believe they're working on that restriction, but it was from a time where people weren't usually putting listings in other MLSs, right? Or they would do a reciprocal, so it was listed in both places. And by the way, that's an advantage if you're a listing agent to have it listed in the other MLS. Which you can do, it's called a reciprocal listing, because then it would be syndicated out to all of the agents that were using their company software to distribute listings. But if I use the MLS software, then it's going to search all of the listings that are in MLS Alliance, which includes most of the major MLSs, but not all of them. And it would include those listings and send it to the client. All right, that's why I recommend that if you've got serious buyers, you set them up on an MLS search. Now, I do use the KV Core system and those listings, but I'm only doing that for bait purposes. And then once somebody has responded and I'm working with them, then I would switch them over to the MLS. I also would set up a search in Zillow, Redfin, and Realtor.com if these are serious buyers. Now, the reason I'm doing that is not all MLSs are part of the MLS Alliance, but Zillow and Redfin and Realtor.com have joined every MLS. So, for example, if you're in Eureka, they're not part of the Alliance. Tahoe is not part of the Alliance. Fresno is not part of the Alliance. So agents that have listed homes there and aren't smart enough, I'm just going to use that word, they're not smart enough to know that because their MLS is not a member of the Alliance, the number of people that are actually going to see their San Jose listing is limited only to people that are in their MLS. right? Which if they're in the Fresno MLS means hardly anybody is going to see the listing, but Zillow and Redfin and Realtor.com are members of every MLS. And so I would go ahead and set up a search in them, and then I would look and see, is Zillow and Redfin or Realtor.com, and usually they have the same ones, are they finding any properties that are not in that search that I created? Because either you can do this and let your client know and find out about the property, or you can wait until your client tells you, I have found a listing that's not on your list. I found listings that's not in your portal. I found listings that you don't know about, right? And now you're having to explain, oh, wow, I don't know. I've actually heard agents say, if it's not in our MLS, it's not a real listing. And I'm like, oh my God, that's not true. Right? If it's not in our MLS, it doesn't mean it's not a real listing in San Jose. It just means that the agent who listed it doesn't understand that putting it in the Tahoe MLS is going to make Zillow see it, but not any of the agents in the Silicon Valley. But your client probably has got a Zillow, Redfin, Realtor.com, and God knows what else. I also run an RPR report on the property. So if I were going to write an offer on or show Sawgrass, as a matter of fact, I've already shown this property. I'm just saying it's on another spreadsheet. But if I were going to be showing this property, I'm going to copy that. Now, notice up here, there's, I don't know if there's an easy way just to go to RPR. There probably is, but it's one of these, view the map, history. See that little link here? RPR's summary. I go there, click on it, bam, there it is, right? And so notice I've already done a CMA on it, and that's the realtor's valuation model. That's what I came up with. And so what I would do is create a report, which means run a CMA, which I would either do here. Usually there's a button here. I would run a CMA, go through, and that's a different class on how to run a CMA using RPR. But once I've created a report, right, and which I've created, once I've created a report, and if I go over here to reports, I create a property report, and here's the property report I created on Sawgrass, and I email this, because when you create the report, you have the ability to send it directly. And by the way, if there are spouses or two buyers or whatever, I make sure I send both of them everything. And notice this is it's called a property report. It's got information about the property. It's got pictures. It's got facts. It's got the AARP livability score. It has a discussion of the schools. It gives them what I found for comps. It gives information about them. You get the idea, right? And so neighborhood stats and property report and all this other kind of stuff, right? It's got stuff, right? Which they sometimes care about, sometimes they do not. There's information on the different schools. This link up here, even though it's a really long link, I take that link and I paste it into the spreadsheet. It's a live link. So my clients later could look at the report simply by clicking on the link in the spreadsheet, right? Rather than, but they got an email, but everything I want, and by the way, I oftentimes will put that spreadsheet in a folder, which is shared with the client, because I want the client to put into the folder their pre-approval letter, at some point the proof of funds, and there will be other documents maybe along the way. So where else do I want to go on this? So that I always do that. If there's any disclosures, I would share with the client. This is prior to showing it. I also definitely, and this is a really important thing, right? Because even though you might not like Zillow and you might think that we're better than Zillow or whatever, they're going to probably use Zillow. And so what I make sure they understand is that if they're on Zillow or Redfin or Realtor.com and they're on Zillow and they see a house and they like the house, there's a picture of a real estate agent next to the house, and it's going to say things like, it'll seem to show that you could look at the property today, but that's not necessarily true, right? Because many times the showing instructions are appointment only, but on Zillow, it looks like you can make an appointment today. And there's a picture of an agent smiling. And they'll say, this is the agent that can help you with this home. And so I point out to my buyers, number one, that agent, the picture of the agent next to the listing in Zillow is not the listing agent. That's not the listing agent. That's just an agent that was paying Zillow for advertising. That agent doesn't know any more about this listing than I do. Plus, just because they have that little calendar thing where you can schedule showings, that does not mean the property is available at that moment for showing, right? Because Zillow does not connect that with the MLS. And so many times I see properties where Zillow has like, want to see it today, but in fact, you can't show it, right? It's not ready to be shown, and they're not letting anybody show it. So what I make sure that they understand is that that agent does not represent the property, not necessarily, right? Doesn't have any special information about the property. And what I want you to do is that when you see one of those, do a screenshot and text it to me, right? If you see something, just do a screenshot. And some people are not going to go into the portal and find it on the portal and like it on the portal. They're just going to send it to you, right? But I can go through and do the whole thing myself. I just want to identify which ones they want to see. You need to discuss with them the percent over list price common in the area. For example, I know where my buyer's top number is, but I also know in the areas that they're looking, people are usually getting about 10% above the list price, which means when we're showing property, we have to show property underneath the list price such that we can make an offer and go up, because that's what's going on. I make sure they know what the average days on market is for their area, because if it's like in this case, it's 8, that means we cannot wait around. I also use Google Calendar to schedule the showings. So once we've got it set up, like once we get it set up, let's say I'm showing Sawgrass again, right? Now, by the way, one of the things that you may find is that, this is still active, Wednesday at noon. One of the things you may find is that sometimes there's open houses. And you might be, I don't know, tempted to figure, well, since there's open houses, my clients can just go look at the houses and I don't need to go there because I got other things to do. It's a nice day, maybe I'll go for a walk, and then they can. That's dangerous. It is very dangerous for you to send your clients out to open houses without you being there. My thing would be, and I live in a place called Morgan Hill, but I sold property in Ben Lomond, which is, let's just say, not close to Morgan Hill. It's like an hour from where I am to where I was showing the properties. My clients had said, hey, most of these are open. We can just go look at them. I said, no, I'll be there, right? Because I want to be talking to the listing agent while they're looking at the property. If you let them go on their own, the chances of you losing them, let's just say it goes up. So if I'm going to show this property, and I would copy the address, and then I would go to my calendar, and let's say I was going to show the property on Sunday, and we're starting at 10 o'clock in the morning, and sometimes they have calendar events that do this for me, but let's say I usually would book 30 minutes. You need to look at the map, and there's a way of creating a map. This could be more than one, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the address in, I'll put the address up here, and then I would invite my clients to it, right? I would add them as a guest, and then they get sent an invite, and what that does is it puts it in the calendar, which makes it really easy for me to tell my cell phone I'm driving there. I click on it, it takes me there. I could add a description, what I might put in the description, if there's a code or something that I would need to know. I might put that into the description. I also could add an attachment. I usually don't do that, but I could, right? If I wanted to add a printout or something like that. And then the next one, and you need to look at it on a map. I'm going to cancel. So how about this? So I would do the next one, and then the next one, and then the next one, and then the next one. And 30 minutes is usually enough, but it all depends. So what I mean by the map, and by the way, one of the things, there are too many classes, right? I mean, I do a lot of them, and EXP does a lot of them, and wherever you are, there's probably a lot of them. But if there's one of the classes that you might want to take, right, is how to use the MLS. And I'll show you what I mean by that. Can I do this here in this? I'm not sure. See where it says directions? Is that going to let me? So when I click on directions, what it's going to do is, starting at a point that it thinks is a good starting point, it being the computer, it's going to list all the properties in geographical order, right? And give you, like, a way to look at it, right? And if I don't like the way these are, I was just doing everywhere in San Jose, so this is way over the place. But I could add a start and I could add a stop. So if I were going to be meeting them, let's say at a Starbucks before we go, and I knew the address, I would add that as a start. I could change the order of these. If I wanted to start with number 8 first, I could rearrange them. And so the reason I look at this is so that I have an idea, how long is it going to take us to go from one to the other? What order should we do them in, right? Because if I do Erlander Street first, and then I do Lee second, and then I do, you see, these are all over the place, and it'll just insane driving around. So the directions part allows you to put them in a particular order, right? And then, and it gives you a suggestion. Notice I could email or print that. And it gives turn by turn. I gotta, I don't usually use that unless I'm showing property up in the sticks, right? So I show property sometimes in rural areas where the GPS isn't working. And if I'm doing that, then I would include these turn by turn directions, because GPS is going to stop. But normally I don't bother with that. I just want to get an order in my mind. Then I put the properties in Google Calendar in the order, giving us enough time that I'm able to drive from one to the other. And if you look at the, if you look at the turn by turn directions, it sort of gives you an idea of how much time you're going to have to spend going from one to the other. Right. And some of them not very long, some of them longer, but you get the idea, right? So that, hey, we're going to start at this one. Now, sometimes you don't have a choice because there is going to be an open house, or there's limits on when you could show it. But that's getting it all together so it's all nice and smooth, right? I could spend more time on that, but I use Google Calendar. Download RPR Mobile. Right? I have it on my phone. I make sure, because sometimes the phone likes to log out of stuff and things like that. I make sure that I have RPR Mobile on my phone and I'm logged in, right? Because what RPR Mobile will let me do is it's going to allow me to pull up information about a property rather quickly. So if I'm busy, which sometimes I am, and it wants me to log in, which I'm not going to do. I haven't logged in. I'm not showing property today, but what I would be doing is I would make sure I was logged into RPR Mobile. So let's say I'm at a house and my clients would start asking questions. What could I do? Well, I could print out the MLS. I could study it, memorize it, but sometimes I'm busy and it's hard for me to remember everything. Like, when year was this house built, and does it have air conditioning and things like that. But when I'm in RPR and before I show the properties, right? Before I go show properties, what I'm going to make sure that I've done is all the properties that I have in RPR. Let me just go take a look at one. Like, let's say this one, I'm going to make sure that I've clicked on the save button. Right now, I've already done this and unsaved it. And what that does, if I save them, it means that on RPR in the bottom, there's a quick list of all my saved properties. So if I've saved the ones that I'm showing that day, I can pull them up really quickly on RPR. And RPR, by the way, tells me who the listing agent is. It shows me the private comments. It has a way for me to call the listing agent, to text the listing agent, to email the listing agent. It would have links to the disclosures that are in the private remarks. It would have comparables. It would have a whole bunch of information that I would look smarter if I knew, being at the property. And so that's what I use when I'm walking around and they're asking questions. I'm using RPR Mobile on my phone because I planned out the showings and I've saved everything. All right. And they have classes on how to use RPR Mobile. Now, some of the scripts that I have were more assuming that we had inventory. My client sent me, it was adorable, right? They sent me this long wish list, right? Good schools, large backyard, not very old, at least this many bedrooms and bathrooms, at least this size, under 1.2 million in Silicon Valley. There aren't a lot, right? There's not a lot. So we're not in a position right now where there's so much inventory. I have to really decide what am I going to show them and what I'm not going to show them. But you might want to, when you're looking at it, you want to make sure that the home is still available, right? That means the morning that I'm going there, I'm going to check and see if the home is still available, because sometimes this will shock you. Listing agents get an offer and they accept the offer and they change the status or don't change the status right away. And they don't necessarily notify all the agents that are scheduled to show the property that they've done it. They just don't do it, right? For whatever reason, they just don't do it. And so I want to know is that morning, I'm going to make sure that the status hasn't changed. Now, you might need to make an appointment. The agents that are using appointments usually are the smart ones, have an appointment link so that you can block out the appointments and people can just schedule them. And one of the things about that, if there's a calendar link, what you might want to do is to hang on to it. Notice I've saved those links, because what I want to know is how many people are showing this property. And if I open up the calendar link and there's like nothing available for the next 4 or 5 days, I know people are showing the property. If I pull up the calendar link and I could have picked any time tomorrow to show the property, that gives me more information about how many people are looking at it. You need to make sure you've looked at the showing instructions on the MLS, right? You might all ask the listing agent if the home is available and if there's been any offers. Why not? Try to give notice, make sure your buyer is ready, that they have the money and they've been pre-approved. And a lot of this is just, when I was in physical offices, I never met 8 buyers at the office. It would always be at the first home or at a coffee shop near the first home. That's typically what they want to do. You can print out MLS sheets, and you can even put that in the folder. There's a client printout. You could do that. Most buyers some people carry them. I've had clients that print them out and carry them. That's all fine. Most of the time they've got Zillow or something, or even the program I've used. You put them, but sometimes people have clipboards and I printed them out, and that's a thing. The 5 must-haves is just a sheet. I don't think I've included it, but it's not very complicated. And a home tour checklist if you have one. And if you're saying, well, I don't have one. Well, let's say you're with EXP, right? And if you're not, I don't know what's wrong. You should talk to me. But if you go down to EXP to the marketing center, one of the things that you're going to find if you go to the marketing center is if we type in checklist, let's just say, in the marketing center, there's a house hunting checklist. How about that? There's a Spanish house hunting checklist. And if you open that up, what you would do is add your picture, add your contact information, right? Once it's all loaded, and I've actually already done this, but it's still asking me, that's not my picture. But if I were to download it, you go through and you modify it. This is giving me an original, but I've already downloaded one, which I have someplace. And it's just a simple little form that you could give to people so that they could take notes if they're in the, we like to handwrite our notes kind of thing. And you would have one of these for every property. You also would, maybe you could have the MLS client printout for the properties. But you understand, I've already sent them RPR, which has pictures and a whole lot of information. This is usually, something that you can make up for them. If you're not with EXP, you can find another version of this through Breakthrough Broker, right? Just saying, right? But, or you could just Google search on the internet home tour checklist and you'll find a bunch of them. Make sure you know how to use the lockbox key and that it works in the area you're showing. I said in the marketing for this session that there's more to showing property than being able to use the lockbox. But you also have to know how to use the lockbox key. And sometimes the lockboxes, it may seem like it's a really obvious thing. You put in your code, you point it at the lockbox, and the key magically appears. It's more complicated than that. And it has to fall, and it has to be vertical, there has to be gravity, and you have to push up so it can fall down. You ought to practice doing that so you're not spending 20 minutes with the client watching you as you're struggling to open up the first lockbox. Also, you don't want to break the lockbox because you don't know how to use it, because then you're going to end up buying one for an angry listing agent. Also, you need to know that if you go outside, like I'm in the MLS listings and we're compatible in the 5 counties with San Francisco County, Alameda County, and Contra Costa County, which means I could go to any of those counties and show property and use my super key. Right? I could show properties in Walnut Creek and use the super key. If I go to Marin County, the boxes look the same. They're Supra boxes, but my key is not going to work because I need to pay them a ransom and get what's called reciprocal access. If I go to Sacramento, the lock boxes are going to look just like the ones in San Jose, but my key won't work because MetroList also demands a ransom. Right? I got to pay them money and fill out a form in order to get my key to work. So I'm not going to, I have most of this is pretty self-explanatory and I'm running out of time because I spent on, other things, but always ring the doorbell, knock on the door, even if it's vacant, yell real estate agent a few times. I'm not going to share, not today, some of the things I walked in on over the years showing homes. Even if it's vacant, it's very good to announce yourself. When you're in the property, you don't want to be a tour guide. In other words, and this is the worst thing to do in my opinion, you don't walk in and say, well, here's the kitchen, right? Because I can see what the buyers are saying. Wow, this guy's pretty good. I can see why you need a license to do this. Hey, here's the bathroom. And then they're thinking, boy, I'll bet he scored high on his real estate test, right? You understand? They don't need you to tell them things like that. So I allow them to go through to discover the property on their own. I follow them and I'm looking for buying signs, things that they are interested or questions they might have. If I'm going to volunteer information, it would be information that's not visible to them, that there's new plumbing in the property, they put in new pipes or new air conditioning or something like that. Most of that was already mentioned. Just because, and finally, after you've showed the property, and this is what one of those sheets would be, you would want them to rank it on a 0 to 5, with 0 being 0 and 5 being the best, how would you rank this? Are you interested in it? And I got into just saying to people, do you want to buy this house? Do you try to tour it beforehand? Yeah, I would try to tour it beforehand. I would try to preview it if it's possible, so that I've seen the properties. I know how to get there, particularly if it's in a condominium or townhouse complex where you need to park at the right place, and it's good to know what's going on. This is in my outline, right? Home touring etiquette. Don't let the pets out. Leave it as you found it. Make sure you've locked all the doors. If you'll see real estate agents leaving business cards. That was an old school thing. People still do it, but go ahead. The system, that lockbox, assuming they're using a real Supra box, will keep track that you were there because you used your key to open the box. They know who you are. They know who you are. And by the way, I don't think I put this in the outline, but you should tell your clients, and you should remember this, that I always tell my clients, you need to assume that everything you say and everything you do is being recorded somehow in this house. You should just assume that, right? And sometimes you'll see they actually have signs that say that there's a security system and they can see and hear. You should just assume that the seller is going to be able to go back and look at what you did and all of that. So making fun of the house and saying, don't do that. We don't do that while we're in the house. Right? You should assume that you're being listened to and you're being watched. Leave your card, lock it up. If you see anything wrong, let the listing agent know. And what we're really doing is looking for buying signs, and usually these are pretty obvious, right? They light up, they start asking questions about the property, they start comparing it, they start discussing what they're going to do with it, they become protective, they don't want other people to see it, that sort of thing. And even raising objections is a sign that they're interested in the property, because if they weren't interested, then why object? But if they start saying things like, oh, that carpet looks terrible, rather than you saying, oh, wow, yeah, I would say, yeah, what would you do if you bought the property? Would you have carpet? Would you put in like a porcelain tile or hardwood floor? What would you do? And then they start talking about what they would do. Oh, the color of the paint on that wall is really ugly. Well, what would you do if this was your house? Well, we'd tear out the wall, So actually, objections can be your friend, right? And then I put in some information about the different, some scripts, but you want to ask them, do you want to buy this house? I just say, do you want to buy this house? And sometimes people say, well, it's on our list, we're thinking about it. On a scale of 1 to 5, is this a 5, a 4? This one's a 3. Okay. Is this something we're going to consider or not? Somebody has to ask them, do you want to buy the house? And that's why we want to discuss how quickly homes sell, so they realize they just can't sit around. Now, I'm not going to go through the rest of this, but basically it talks about what happens if there's no offers. Right now, we're in a market where the buyer needs to move quickly. If they're serious about buying a home, they need to move quickly. And if they don't realize that, then you're going to be disappointed, because the home will be sold prior to you even having a chance to write an offer. Anyhow, I've gone on a little bit long. I hope that I didn't, waste your time or anything. So unless there's a question right now, a burning question. Monica says, thank you. You're welcome, Monica. All right. By the way, also, for those of you that are in my program, I've included a list of things in the document library that you might want to have in your car. You might want to have disinfecting wipes. You might want to carry with you booties that you could put on your feet. You might want to have hand sanitizer. You might want to have some extra masks and things like that. There's just some things that I could talk about this for a much longer time period. All right, but I'm done. You worn me out. I hope you found that helpful. Next week, we're going to take the next step. So they're interested in writing an offer. What are you going to do? All that sort of stuff. Very good, everybody. Stay safe out there, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.